Okay. Welcome to our fourth session of the 2025 Winter Virtual Club Development Series. Before we get into it, quick reminder to keep your microphones muted while you're listening. As always, use the chat for questions and comments. You'll also be able to raise your hand as we have some questions later in the session. Otherwise, you can add to the chat as they come up, and I'll monitor that, help Rob keep an eye on that as we go. We will have some time for questions, though, as we said, and we encourage you to leave your cameras on so we know who we're talking to. But reminder that we are recording this so that it can be available to rewatch for those who missed it. So know that you are on camera if you've got your camera on. I'm Jocelyn Poirier. I'm the manager of rugby development at Rugby Ontario. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you from Gananoque, Ontario, the traditional territory of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, land covered by the Crawford Purchase of 1783. And as Rugby Ontario's member clubs and all of you are situated on traditional Indigenous territories across the province, I invite you all to pause and we'll just reflect on our privilege to work, learn, and play on these lands and share our gratitude to the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have been and continue to be the caretakers of these lands. If you'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands that you are on, please feel free to do so in the chat, or you can unmute and say that now. Okay. With that, I will introduce our main speaker for the night. So Rob McQueen is our Rugby Development Officer here at Rugby Ontario. He's been in his role here working with a subsection of the Southwest branch for over 2 years now. It comes to us with a long history of rugby and sport experience. Rob began playing and coaching rugby in high school and has been involved for over 30 years, coaching at all levels from youth to senior, high school, club, branch, and university. He's the club founder of Middlesex Huron Youth Rugby Club and has held many volunteer roles in the rugby community and at the club and branch level outside of his coaching roles. Beyond rugby, he's also a former strength and conditioning coach and PGA of Canada golf professional. Rob lives in Blenheim, Ontario with his wife, stepdaughter, and 2 dogs, who knows, maybe we'll get a guest appearance from them as well tonight. So I'll pass it over to Rob. Take it away.
Yeah, no appearance, but you may hear the barking, but hopefully we're all good on that front. Yeah, hello everyone. So as Jocelyn said, I started this role in December of 2022. And of course, that first probably month and a half, we're just trying to figure out what the heck we're going to do, being new, a new role, and trying to get acquainted with some objectives. But so I'm going to give a run through of sort of the full sort of two plus years of work I've done. And I'm just going to open up with sort of this big, broad question that I was asked in my interview, and I continue to ask myself what it is, but what exactly is rugby development? It's a pretty big subject. So trying to take that piece and deciding on what I'm going to do has always been in the back of my mind. But just quickly, so obviously the first one people think of is we just want to get more people playing, increase participation. With that goes improved public perception of the sport, building relationships within the community, and much more. There's the other side of it, competitions development. We need to have suitable competition for everybody to play in, having an appropriate challenge for everyone, taking into consideration geographic considerations and financial considerations. The other area, club development. I can't even see my screen now because we're cup blocked here, but let me just see if I can find that. There we go. There's a big one, this sort of the whole area of club development, how we get more volunteers, recruit them, retain them. How do we get our admin prepared and with all the knowledge they need to have? How do we develop coaches? What should our programs look like? What type of program should we have? When should we be developing? And that other also within the community relations side of things. Program development touched on a little bit, but there's a lot that we can touch on there in terms of rugby development, recruiting, the variety of programs we can have, team programs versus intro programs, bridge programs, developing curriculum, team culture, coach development, player safety, team management, and communications. Just on that side of things for the program. Schools development, massive opportunities here. How do we do that in this sport, and build the capacity to deliver effective programming in schools? So that's kind of the big overarching questions. When Yeah, so in the beginning, my core functions, Rugby Can were directed by Rugby Canada. And I was largely focused on boots on the ground in elementary schools. The initial mandate was at least 3 days a week, getting in as many elementary schools as I could. So that was a big part of my task. Of course, secondary schools were not necessarily in the initial plan, but we did do some of that. And of course, communication piece, making sure that all the club leaders and the branch leaders in the region were kept informed with everything on Rugby Ontario. I was also tasked with sort of some project management, organized leading projects, and any type of coach or master official development courses that I could help assist or set up. Those are my initial core functions. So I'm going to sort of talk quite a bit, and go a little bit more in depth about some of the elementary school work I did in the beginning. This sort of try, play, stay model was kind of the model World Rugby had. So essentially that meant we need to get out and introduce the sport to as many people, let them try it. On that front, there are millions of opportunities, endless opportunities to get in front of schools. It's not necessarily that hard. Then, of course, we wanted to be able to take those initial introductions and move them into some form of play so that kids could have a chance to experience being on a team and being in some kind of a competitive game, however that was, whether that was a school festival or sort of a come and try festival, or any kind of play they could get to experience with it within a team format. And of course, in the end, we want them to stay. We want them to join our clubs, and sort of building some relationships there and making that happen. So that was the model I was sort of working with in the schools. So I'll go into more schools now. I did quite a few schools in the beginning. It was fairly easy to get in touch with teachers, principals. I would just basically email the teachers, email the schools, email principals, and get into schools that way. A few sort of club connections also assisted me get into schools. Certainly that wasn't a problem. There was more demand than I could meet in that sense. I would try to work at least sort of 3 or 4 sessions minimum, or with a school as I could. I put a model out of, like, I'd try to do 4 sessions. Teachers could maybe do 2 in between, helping them learn as I went. So I did a lot of this. This was kind of like going around. I did this in St. Thomas, I did this in London, South London. I did this in Chatham. I did this in the Middlesex area. And this was fairly successful. Kids love the sport. I could go in, I could teach them. The programming was well received. The teachers loved it. The kids loved it. So that seemed to be all positive. So the introduction piece, the try piece was easy, and it was looking to be successful. Moving them into getting play is where the sort of challenges started to come up. I was able to get a few play events established with schools, but in my area, there is challenges with sort of getting teachers out of school, having supply teachers costs covered, and getting any kind of inter-school event. The only thing I was able to do really was get sort of a single school event happening. But this was ongoing. This is what I was doing for almost a year straight. And sort of just to kind of give you a sense of what one project in detail was like, I'm going to move to sort of the Chatham project. So this involved 5 schools. Each of these schools had at least 3 or 4 sessions. And, only one school was able to get an event out of this. But we did have a really good event. The kids all got out of class for the full morning. The teacher was very supportive. The principal was supportive. I had helpers from a high school team in Chatham, about 5 or 6. We had 100 kids playing that day. They played a bunch of games. They divided into 4 teams each. They played sort of full round robin games, and there was a skill zone set up in between games with some of the high school students teaching some skills and having some skills competitions. Um, so this all looked pretty good. We were looking like this was going to be a great success. At the end of that day, 100 students, about 85% of them, when I asked them, sort of put their hands up, yes, I had a lot of fun today. And then when I asked the next question, how many of you would like to join a team? About 50 to 60% of them said yes, they would. So everything looked great from that perspective. We hosted, Havoc hosted a come and try event, probably a week or within a week of that ending. And then we had only 7 show up. And only 3 ended up joining the Havoc Club. So that was sort of a first little like, what are we doing here? A lot of success in the schools, a lot of excitement, but we can't move them to any type of club environment.
Rob,
Um,
on that note,
yep,
just a question in the chat here that maybe relates.
yep.
Stu asked about, do clubs have access to the schools you've contacted or done any programming with in their respective regions? So do you want to just chat about the connection to clubs and how that works?
Yeah, so this was planned with the junior director. This particular event was planned with the junior director of the Kent Havoc. And one of the people in the schools was a longtime member of the Kent Havoc. So they had sort of, the club had helped me organize the Havoc event. They knew the schools. They'd created flyers for the event. They put social media ads for the event. Um, so yeah, the club was well aware of this, and they were part of the planning from the get-go. And some of the club members were even helping in the schools with me as well. Everything I've done has always been done with the clubs and their support and their understand and their awareness. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay. All right, I'll move forward. Secondary schools is a little bit easier, and I'll come back to this in a bit, but so I'll just go through a bunch of the stuff I've done secondary schools. When I began the Lambton Kent School Board, which is Chatham and Sarnia, they were down to only two boys programs and 3 girls programs. In that board, for them to sanction any kind of competition, there's a minimum of 3. So they were in a bit of tough situation there. So I helped UCC and Chatham get a new boys program started, so that made it 3. And we were able to save the league and keep that going based on that. So I was basically I called the school, helped the principal or helped the AD connect them with a teacher staff, and I sort of helped the coaching and got them started. So that program in Chatham is still going now with new other coaches, and that league is starting to thrive again. In Sarnia, in 2024, we kind of plan to like revive their junior league. So they only had a varsity senior league only. So I did a bunch of phys ed classes for probably a month and a half at Sarnia Northern, Petrolia, St. Pat's, and later on North Lambton. But this was kind of the most successful thing I probably did from a direct translate into playing with the club perspective. The grade 9 classes, fairly easy to do. They were able to learn quicker, walked into the schools, and the teachers were supportive. So we did a bunch of grade 9 and grade 10 classes. All those schools were able to field 10-a-side junior teams in their league that spring. And they were able to get their club back to 15. They had 15 new kids and keep their club junior U16 boys program going again. So that was one project. Another project, Holy Cross, is a small school in Strathroy. They don't have a football program. They're probably about a 400 student school. So I approached them to do some phys ed classes initially. They were very receptive in terms of the AD, very supportive. They're always trying to find a way to engage their kids in extracurriculars, and they haven't lost their football program. They were interested in getting a rugby program started. So that we kept working on that one. And then last fall, they were able to get a 7s program started. Spring is quite busy there with soccer and track and limited number of students. So they're probably a fall only school, but at least there is access to rugby, and it's now in the culture there. They play in a tournament. Hopefully it's going to grow from here. And then last fall in St. Thomas, Central Elgin is another new school that is sort of that mid-sized school that had lost their football program years ago and didn't want to invest in the cost of restarting it. So they've now got a high school program. So I did a 3-day clinic out there, helping their teachers. I got their teachers guided to get certified in coaching, and I ran a clinic to help them sort of get their feeling for how to coach in the program. And I continue to support them. I've done I'll be doing 5 sessions through the month of April to help them get started. And just in general, sorry, what did I just do there? Yes. So yeah, so when you look at secondary schools and I look at elementary schools, the big difference is with, the try, play, stay. It's pretty easy to get kids excited in both scenarios. It's pretty easy to get them interested in the sport. Getting them to play in high school is obviously simple. There's leagues, they stay after school. There's no real hurdle for them to start playing games. They can form a team and just start playing. In elementary school, getting that next step is hard. And then it's even harder, of course, to get competition for elementary school. So the secondary schools is pretty ripe and pretty easy to attack. And I think there's lots of room to grow there, especially in the phys ed classes. Even all the high schools that have existing programs across the province, probably not a lot of them do phys ed in their grade 9 programming. And having curriculum and having people to go support their grade 9 classes is an area that I continue to do and grow as much as I have time to do. And it's an area that probably every club across the province could do a better job of supporting phys ed classes in their schools that have programs. And if so, and if not, even without programs that can lead to programs. So that's kind of like where I'm at with the schools. I mean, so in supporting all this, we've sort of hit a wall with elementary schools, and we started to think, what's better use of time? And I'll sort of come back to that whole strategy of my role a little bit later. Just going to pivot briefly now to another area of sort of function that an RDO can serve. And this is sort of the approach of regionality. I don't think many clubs are thinking about how to grow their region and what their region could look like and how rugby in the region could look like. They're sort of focused on the club only. Being independent from any club to a large degree has allowed me to kind of look at the region here. So this is just a brief map of the region I've been working in, going down from Chatham across to Sarnia and then the greater London area. It's kind of the focus. And traditionally, that area has been served mainly by 2 clubs, Sarnia and London. A strategy for a region is something that I've sort of always been kind of working on, is what can this region look like and how do we grow this region? Sarnia has always been isolated and always struggled to get competition. So how do we fix that problem is an area that I've been kind of working on. And just sort of moving forward with this group. So a regional project that I was able to do, and this goes to sort of having somebody in your area that is aware of the leaders and aware of each club's kind of development is kind of a key piece and really helpful. So I knew what Sarnia had in terms of their programming at U14. I knew what Chatham had. I knew what Middlesex had. So this last season, none of them are quite at capacity to put their own teams in. They might have, had there not been an RDO, all those programs may not have run, or they may have only run with 2 of them. Just having an awareness, having someone that's in connection with all those clubs, connected them all together, put a plan together to make sure that they could continue their own programs in their own clubs, meet occasionally for a combined practice, and then compete together as a group within this U14 loop. So that was one small project from a regional perspective that we were able to accomplish. Um, Another bigger one is I mentioned a bit earlier about sort of the Sarnia development and how they were able to get U16 program. They were working real hard. Sarnia had done a lot of work to revive their junior program. They fell short of that 18 number they needed. They were at about 15 or 16. And, it's kind of a kick in the pants to do all that work and then not have a competition. It just kind of worked out quite luckily. London was in the same boat. London had about 15, 16. And I just come across Stratford by being out and about and listening to Stratford, realized that they were back to getting their junior program going. And then I also knew that Middlesex had a surplus numbers that may be able to support this. But this was coming end of April, end of May, and nobody had teams to play in, leagues to play in. Fortunately, like that I had this information, was able to quickly put together a league for them. And that turned out to be quite successful. Sarnia, Stratford, London, and we also included Waterloo with their surplus players and Middlesex, their surplus players, to play a regional league. It was 12-a-side league. But they were able to have programming, and I think their clubs are in good shape to grow as a result of that. Most of those players are probably sustained this year. So that was a regional project that was able to be accomplished last season. And then going forward this year, this is sort of that area of sort of in between London and Sarnia. This area we put together, see, it's your intern application was successful with Southwest. So as I was saying, I'm not sure where I got cut off, but high school here. Uh, we'll try and get as many as we can, but it's only an 8-week application. So, maybe 4 to 6 schools we'll try to conquer in May and June and work some events from there and try to get the kids. And, I think I found frequently that in these rural communities that there's not as much competition for sport, and parents are looking for more stuff for their kids to do. So we'll see how the success goes here. But that's another project that's sort of a regional project. It's not necessarily tied to any one club specifically, but it helps both Middlesex and Surrey states and even London for that matter having. So like that's kind of the broader picture of regionality, and I just sort of this area I want to speak to a bit more. So this is the Thames Valley. This map here is the Thames Valley School Board. For the past 20 years, prior to 2022, this whole area was served by one club, London St. George's. Just before I had got the job as RDO, I had founded the Middlesex Club. I've been in this area coaching just north of London at Medway for a long time and thinking long it could grow. Yeah, so trying to tackle this region, how do we grow this region? The London Rugby Club is right basically where that plane is, just this was sort of a largely coordinated. There's the ground probably would not have. I'm not sure what would have happened without the RDO, to be honest, but it came at the right time. We were able to build 2 clubs in the area. Can you move slides now to the next one, Joss? And just a quick FYI for everybody, that region I just showed you there, there's about 15 girls' schools and about 7 boys' schools in that region. So this is kind of the Middlesex Rugby Club situation. We did it before the RDO started. We had run through this as I was president of Southwest Grassroots Development, and we had run a very successful post-COVID intro to rugby. I think we got lucky actually that it was post-COVID, so it kind of buoyed our hopes. But we had 51 kids sign up in a first-only like brand new program. I think we just kind of caught everybody at the right time before other sports had started. But we did manage to get a nucleus of those to stick around with the club. And that was the sort of the start of the Middlesex Sharon Rugby Club. It's continued to grow. We ran U12 through U16 programs in 2024. We'll be adding U18 in 2025. And we now have a new president as well. So I was president of that from the beginning and the founding, and now it's being run without me, which is nice. So you can move slides there again. Another sort of project that I've worked on over the past couple years is St. Thomas. I wouldn't. This is more an idea club. It's not a club, but there are people in St. Thomas that speak of the Railway City Rugby Club becoming reality one day. So I've done a fair amount of elementary school work there. I've supported the high school with some clinics there. There's now 3 high school boys programs in St. Thomas, 2 strong girls programs that have been there for quite a while. There are some leaders in St. Thomas that would like to have some kind of their own club, whether that's probably just as a satellite club of London. I don't. It may be in the future become its own distinct club. But there's some plans this year to run junior programming in 2025 in St. Thomas. And we'll see how that transpires. But there are enough boys to make it happen. We'll just have to see how it all works with London and with Middlesex all competing for the same kids. Yeah, you can move next slide. And just quickly on that St. Thomas thing too. At 43,000, I just did some quick investigating. They're calling for St. Thomas to be over 75,000 people by 2050, based on the growth and the new plants there and new job growth there. So that's an area that will probably continue to grow, and there's lots of prospect for club rugby in St. Thomas that can really help the area. So that kind of is sort of on the regionality front. Like there's a lot of work that can be done. I'm sure there's regions across Ontario where they can look at the region and say, how could it be better? What could there be more clubs? What could we do to grow the rugby from a regional perspective? Only the largest clubs probably are even thinking about that, but that's something from an RDO perspective that we've really been able to tackle the whole region and try to think about how to grow the region so that we're not dependent on Oakville driving down to Sarnia to make the game grow, and we can be sustainable on our own. So I'm just going to pivot a little bit here now. So that's sort of that school stuff. There's a lot of positives there, but we were just unable to find a way to get it to sustain itself, based on me being one person. Not enough people to get out into schools, enough to get some momentum going. Not able to quite conquer from a board perspective how to get them to do PD and get them to take it on in terms of internally. So we sort of had hit a wall there with our schools, and we needed to kind of pivot and rethink how we were moving forward. So throughout the summer, some discussions with the London people and what we would do here. And what we sort of came up with was what we called the London Grow the Game project. And this is sort of moving in the direction of, we had done lots of school outreach. We had done sort of, it was more of a recruiting angle. Now we had to think about how are we going to sort of establish some infrastructure. What does the area need from a programming, from a coach development, from a club development perspective? So this was a project that ultimately its goals were to, one, start a winter training program, and 2, to start a spring house league. These are kind of big projects that, with a limited capacity and volunteers at London, they needed someone to really do that sort of initial legwork and launch it to get it going. So I spent quite a bit of time working on this over the winter. We initially started to, initially the issue was facilities. London has lots of gyms, high schools and stuff. Amazingly, they're almost all booked. Going through the schedules, finding a way to find facility times, I probably spent a month itself just on that project alone. And that's something that would have probably stumped any regular volunteer. They would have probably given up at the headaches of trying to find facilities. So an overview of this, of course, scheduling, curriculum, and coaching for both these programs had to be coordinated and organized. Marketing and promotions, obviously to start new stuff and need to go on social media and stuff. So this project was sort of, it was led by me. London had a Jumpstart grant that was largely able to pay for facilities, and that we also hired a project coordinator. This was a university student at Western who recently graduated from playing. She's a PhD student, so that was hired. She was able to keep the club connected, make sure that all the legwork in terms of budget and finances was taken care of, and she did a lot of the marketing and promotion and stuff. That was that project. So you can move forward to the next screen, Jocelyn. So just quickly, why do we want to do a winter training program? Across the province, there's becoming demand for more this type of thing. Many clubs are starting to do it. We had enough demand within. We ran a little kind of high school clinic to see what the interest was in the fall. 75 kids showed up. So there is demand for more rugby in the winter and more skill development in the winter. And just obviously just for more player development. Another big piece of this was to start to try to find some kind of infrastructure for coach development. You may think the same or have concerns. I personally don't think Rugby Canada has the greatest coach development system, and many would probably say the same thing. We're working to improve that, and how do we do that? It may have to be more club-led stuff and local-led stuff, but the opportunities to mentor, to work together, to share information, and really get our coaches sort of the resources and the skills they have seem to elude us. We have our sort of standard NCCP, but the mentoring, I know that we're working on having a coach development people in Ontario, and that's a work in progress. But I felt like I could just take it on the horns or take the bull by the horns here and try to see what we could do to get some kind of coach development within this winter academy. Integrate the player pathway. So these kids may eventually want to move from their local winter development onto Southwest branch programming. And again, we can sort of talk about whether needs to be advanced or beginner. This program in the future may split into some kind of introductory programming and then advanced programming. But ultimately, one of the big pieces here that was important in terms of the growth of the game was we wanted to build community between the high school athletes who had sort of fallen in love with the sport and wanted more, and getting them to start to think about the next step of becoming a coach. By having these programs kind of running at the same time, several of the winter training people have also become trained in coaching for our new spring league U12 and U10. And one of the main kind of promotion events we ran was in sort of the 1st of March. And that's where we brought everybody together. So the whole winter training academy athletes, as well as all of our house league, we're doing a big sort of drop-in sort of promotion come and try night. And we made that a big night where the whole club was there. We filled the gymnasium full of maybe close to a couple hundred people with parents and athletes and kids. It was sort of your typical come and try type activities for the young kids, interspersed with like an all-star touch game, both boys and girls from the academy athletes. And just having that sort of environment where our high school athletes are starting to see and realize they can become coaches and get their first taste of it. Just noticed my typo in the community there, but anyway. So yeah, we're trying to combine these two things. I know lots of other sports do this. They sort of are integrating in soccer that once you get old enough, you start coaching little kids. I don't know how well we do this across the province, but that was certainly a goal of this program. You can move ahead. Next slide, Joss. So as I mentioned a bit about the curriculum, this is of course difficult and a work in progress, trying to get a bunch of coaches who've never coached together onto some kind of plan where we were coaching the kids sort of in a designed way and progress them in a designed way. We started this will take some time. Ideally, if we get some curriculum, this can be shared across the province and with our local coaches and really assist in terms of them having easy access to resources for their coaching. I won't say much more there. Go ahead and move the next slide, Joss. So this is just kind of an overview of the winter training thing. We sort of split it up into 8 modules. Each had their sort of own dates. Coaches were sort of assigned to particular modules. We had hoped that the coaches would provide curriculum or work together and provide curriculum for each module. Some of that got done, some of that's still a work in progress, some of it was makeup as we go. Um, but at least the plan is out there now, and we can continue to kind of work on sort of any of these modules and developing a kind of a 6 to 7 session. I think this is where it's the most difficult to train coaches is, how do they progress over the course of, 7 to 8 weeks? What does that look like? There's lots of access to plenty of resources, but not necessarily a progressive start to finish kind of plan for coaches. So the more people can come up with this, I think the more we are better off in Ontario. Um, and I don't know how to get there. It just requires coaches to sort of spend some time and do the work. And if our RDO can sort of coordinate and help that. You can move on, Josh. So the second main piece of this London Grow the Game project was Spring League. And so this curriculum here, and this is maybe depending on time, I might get into detail, or we'll see how it goes. But all my work with elementary schools, I've kind of now narrowed it down to we don't need so many games. I did receive some criticism from teachers about the rookie rugby resources. They find it a lot. They find it a lot to have to decipher through what should be used, what's usable, what's not usable, and what works at certain ages and how to progress. And they said there's no real sense of how this progresses over time. Scaffolding is the word, or progression is the word they use. How does this layer on top of each other so that they can develop their kids over time? So that's kind of one criticism I received from the rookie rugby resources. Lots of ideas, lots of games, but they don't necessarily know where to start and how to use it. So I've kind of narrowed down all my coaching with the kids now to 5 core games. And these are games that I can go in detail. These are games that I'm going to be teaching everywhere. But there's really not too much that has to be done with these games. They're sort of just the main goal, I guess, was to really simplify it. We don't want 25 games to teach people. We don't want some area using these 4 games and some area using that 5 games. If we can really agree on a way to teach kids rugby that can be simplified and use just 5 or 6 games, I think make life easier for everyone in terms of developing coaches and growing the sport. So we probably have time to get into a few of these games. So there's 5 games. You can move on to the next screen. So 2 or 3 of them are passing focused, and some of them are running focused. This is my favorite game. I've done this game since 2004. Kids love this. It's easy to start at any age. It's easy to get them to have a game, exciting right from the get-go. They don't need to learn anything. So mounting the middle is on rookie rugby. Some of you may be familiar with mounting the middle. The way I play this game is it's kind of got levels to it, 10 different levels. So that allows me to, based on whatever age I'm working with, level 1, for example, is all the game is you just got to make 10 passes. So whatever the size grid you want to use, if it's 10 by 10, 20 by 20, a gymnasium for an elementary school, that works quite well in a class. So really, it's just get the ball in your hands. It's a passing game. It's a teamwork game. It's a communication game. It's a running and evasion game. It's a defense game. It's tracking. So it's really simple. They don't have to know anything. It's just about all the sports like soccer and hockey and basketball, just getting open, finding space, finding a teammate, making a pass. But I've always found that when I watch kids play rugby, it tends to be one kid gets it, he wants to run. Getting kids to pass is a challenge often in rookie rugby. So this game is about passing. The purpose of it is to pass. It's not to score. It's to make passes. So I think that this, as a piece, as a core, one of the 5 games, really, when taken together, and I'll speak to that a little bit more, but having passing focused games where the purpose of the game is to pass and to find space and to work as a team, communicate, get open, I think has been really good. And the idea of it is, so in level 1, I've done this in grade 2, I've done this in grade 9, I've done this with my high school teams. I played this game at University of Laurier. You can make it as super easy as you want to, or as hard as you want to. But level 1, they only need to make 5 passes. There's only 1 defender. And that could be a full class of 20 kids or a full group of a dozen kids, whatever your size is, one defender, they've all got to make 5 passes to pass that level. That's an easy start. You'll find even at the beginning, kids will still drop the ball, they'll panic, they'll do weird things, but you're just teaching them not to panic, be calm, catch the ball, get open. Simple. The game just progresses. Level 2 is 2 defenders, and they got to make 7 passes. Level 3 is 3 defenders, make 10 passes, and then you just keep adding defenders all the way up. So it goes all the way up to 10 defenders, or depends on how big your group is. If you only had a small group, your level 10 might be only 6 or 7, but you just make it as hard as the kids are able to do. And really what as a coach, you're trying to just get them at the right level of challenge. If it's too easy, you just make it harder. If it's too hard, try to coach them through all that challenge and difficulty. You try to boost them up. Can you handle this challenge? Those types of things. But kids like that challenge. They like to have to know what the clear challenge is and have a clear goal and have a clear level to pass, as opposed to just doing random skill activities, giving them a clearly defined goal. And I always say, like, if you make the level 10 on their first day, you get a free trip to Disneyland. And you'll have them have their attention pretty good for the next 20 minutes if you say that kind of thing. But so, a defender can block, that's it. They can knock the ball out of your hands. They can't push or hold or charge. And there's lots of ways to adapt this game. So, you can probably, if for the coaches on this call who've done with kids, you'll know there's 2 or 3 kids in a class who try to hide in the corner when this game's going on, and they're just scared, or they maybe don't want to participate, or they're just nervous, not athletic, don't want to embarrass themselves, whatever the case may be. This is where you can use things like superpowers. And if you're familiar with Rusty Earnshaw and his gamification type stuff, the way to make this fun, superpowers, is it might be another screen. Another screen. Move to the next screen, Joss. Go to the next one. Yeah. So I skipped over a bunch of stuff there, but superpowers is a way to both enhance strategy and also to include people who may be not included. But for example, the person who hides, doesn't want to get involved, or just is shy and needs a boost of confidence, you can give them a superpower. That means if they get past 2, you can either double up or triple up. It counts as 3 passes. So Susie, who's hiding in the corner, doesn't want to get the ball. You give Susie a superpower, and all of a sudden, all her teammates are trying to give her the ball. And vice versa, you can give fire hands, the ball hog on your team, who loves to run around, deke people, hold it for 10 minutes, show off how many people he can run around, but he won't pass it. Fire hands. So that means he's only allowed to hold the ball for 2 seconds. At 3 seconds, the ball melts. They're back to 0. Another superpower you can give a person who's nervous under pressure, you can give them a force field. No defenders allowed within a meter of them. Just things like this. And you can be creative and make up stuff outside of this too, but these are some ideas I've used. I've also used instant replays. So as the levels get harder, it's like level 7, there's 7 defenders, they're doing really well. 3 guys have fire hands, and all of a sudden 1 guy with fire hands panics, and at the 8th pass and they drop it, they got 1 instant replay. They can start again at 8 that level. So as a pure passing game, as a pure get them excited about evasion, about running, about defense, about teamwork and passing and getting open. Kids love this game, and it gets the ball moving. It gets them handling pressure and staying calm. You teach them that, no one's allowed to push you in this game, so there's no reason to panic when you have the ball. Just hold it as long as you need to, unless you have fire hands, and you don't give fire hands until people are confident. So that game I've used every school I've ever done. Teachers love it. Teachers will walk away and do that one again. And it's a real pass-focused game. I don't know how much time we want to spend on detail here. Maybe leave it at that, Jocelyn, for as far as details of games for now.
Yeah,
And just
quick question for you on this one though, and then we can always come back and go into some of the other ones. But question from Stu around coaching that players can intercept or knock the ball out of hand. That it can lead to yellow cards in later age grades, right? They can't slap a ball out of hands or knock it down. How have you found that with the younger age ranges?
I can clarify that a little bit. So anybody who plays a musical instrument knows that if you practice wrong, you end up playing it wrong. So you slow down and you get your scales right, and it's the muscle memory that sort of helps establish when you go quick. Then your muscles already know how to do it correctly. So and it's only a reflection on that. I know that you're probably just like, hey, kids play. You know, it's all a little bit of chaos, and you really just want to get them playing, which is great. But I'm curious in your approach. Um, have you found that it's worthwhile to coach the way you want to play versus, hey, these are new players. Let's just let them play, get the ball in hand. We'll worry about the infractions later. Do you have anything reflections on that?
Yeah, for sure. I have the exact same problem every year with my basketball players coming out to my U16 18 teams. They're reaching in, they're knocking the ball down all the time, and they have to relearn that they can't do that. I think it's probably similar to the debate of whether you should teach people English and French in elementary school, and are they gonna, if you go to French immersion, are they gonna be weaker at English because they haven't practiced English enough? I think in the end, this game is really just about getting them to play. And it's really all my games, to be honest. I focus when it's touch and it's non-contact rugby. I don't focus that much on defense. Until you're starting to tackle, defense is not that important in my mind. It's about controlling the ball, about playing with your teammate, making passes, seeing space. So I don't worry too much about those little defensive details in touch when I'm playing with kids. I'm worried about offense being able to hold the ball, find space, find their teammates, work together as a team, include everyone, find strategies to get open and work together. So yeah, I hear what you're saying in terms of those habits, and you got to retrain habits later. But it's not a pure skill development thing. It's more of a teamwork, enjoy the sport, work together, have fun type of game.
For what it's worth, we just integrated the two touch system. So first touch is you have to pass, and then second touch is where you emulate the ruck. And our kids, like up to U18s, they thought that two touch was the second person touching. And as soon as we stopped them, we slowed them down. We were like, hey, no, 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 no. The whole point is that you can run past contact, right? You can run through a tackle. And so if in the drills, instead of every time that we're, in two-hand touch, we're putting it down and forming the ruck, and then we're moving on from there. We're teaching them, hey, no, you can kind of move on a little bit and go through contact because you can get those different passes. You think about the game differently. And we found that it really opened up the play in a very interesting way. As soon as they got it, as soon as they're like, oh, I can keep going, really opened up the play a lot. Anyway, sorry, thanks.
Oh, two touches, one of
Yeah,
my
no,
favorite games.
that's actually a good point. It kind of segues in. All these games are just new games with new rules that give them new opportunities and new ideas. And that's the way I've coached all the way up to U18. Like it's always games, change the rules for whatever reason you want to accomplish. Um, and the main thing here, they're all different levels and there's progressions to them. So they like all these games can be done in grade 4 or 5. They can be done in grade 9 or 10. Just have to increase the level of difficulty. So there's built-in level of difficulty here. I can't really get into all the details of how these games work and how they should be coached and what's good and what's bad. That's probably a coaching seminar someday. But just trying to outline like that philosophy of is the same games, but just increasing difficulty. If we have the same games that everybody can use and teach, then it's just so much easier to develop coaches because the number one need we have, well, I shouldn't say number one, but one big need we have is more coaching and more ease of developing and training coaches. Um, and the system we have right now is tough until we get that easy access to games and the activities. We have the theory and the sort of the certification, but that doesn't give you the experience of developing kids from step by step by step over time and proper difficulty, proper challenge, etc. So that's my thing with these 5 games. There's lots of levels to them. I won't get too much more in the details. I think Ultimate Rugby, many of us know if we've coached any rookie rugby, It's just ultimate frisbee, sort of rugby style. I've got some different levels here to make it easier or harder, but we can move on from that, Jocelyn. And these are more the running focus games. So those ultimate rugby and Mounties is more like the goal of those is more passing than it is running. And then I sort of focus now on the actual running straight, running forward, finding space type games. So everybody knows kind of British Bulldog from their elementary school days. This last game, this is one way I've found with fairly minimal experience can play a good game that's as close to rugby as you can get. Try to play touch with full numbers or even teams. It's pretty difficult for beginners. Same thing with flag. I have a game. This is again one of those games that has multiple levels, and you can make it harder as the kids get better. I just call it 3 strikes. So really, it's just touch rugby, but you're starting with say 5 or 6 players, maybe even could be 7 or 8, depending on your sort of group size. But it's just the first sort of introduction of continuity. So the other games don't necessarily have a continuity in phase, not running forward. But it's basically a 5v1 to start. And can they get across and not run crazy and just score? If you get touched once, it's a strike. They can pass again. Touched twice, it's a strike 2. They can pass again and keep playing. The third strike, they're out. So you can line up sort of 5 or 6, you can 2 teams or 3 teams or 4 teams, 6 or 7. One team's on defense, and you tell them how many players are allowed on the field at once. At beginning, they only allow 1. So if it's team 1 versus 2, 6 versus 1, they go across how many times they score before they get 3 outs. Once they've got 3 outs, other teams on offense switches up on defense. 5v1, 5v2, however you want to do it. So for example, on Sunday in the House League in London, we spent the first probably 10 minutes of our game playing 5v2. They started scoring all the time. I moved it to 5v3. Then it became a challenge. You can progress that. That can be 7v5. It can be 8v4. But just that simple, go forward, find space, pass your teammates, and it has a structure to it. There's some strikes and some outs. You got 3 outs before the next team's up. You don't have to worry about all those transitions. It's a little bit easier than a full game of touch or a flag. And I find this is the best bridge between skills and playing any kind of touch, or ideally, as we move towards T1, I think this is a good bridge towards playing T1. I think T1 is smart because they've designed it so that you always get some overlaps, 3v2s, 2v1s. So if you teach 3 strikes and teach good 3v1s and 3v2s, once they have the structure of T1, I think they'll be ready to go. And I literally think you could teach a 10, 11-year-old how to play T1 in 5, 6 sessions, and they can do it fairly successfully with these 5 games. Again, I'll be teaching these. This is sort of just to outline that I've kind of got a curriculum of core games. And that's kind of where I'm looking at moving this league and trying to train a bunch of people. So just before I get moving forward, this is the next slide here. The Spring House League I have in London, this year we had 40 people sign up, year 1. I'm modeling it after what they do in Cleveland Rugby. You guys can look this up. There's a full podcast on it. Just search Cleveland Rugby if you want to hear how they've done things. But they began in 2010 with 40 kids. They run just a 6-week league. It's April. It's done by end of May. They have football season starts in the summer, so they don't want to compete with that. But they're Rookie Rugby. So what they did, they started there with just that sort of small group. Then they sort of had this same idea that we have in Ontario with game leaders, what they call them recruiters. They trained a bunch of high school people, university students, to go out and be in their games. They're sort of whatever their equivalent of Rookie Rugby is in the States. It might be called Rookie Rugby. I think it is in the States. Train them the same way we're training our people in the game leaders. They went to elementary schools from literally they went young, even the kindergarten and grade 2 classes. And they became the coaches. Then they trained the parents to be thecoaches. They have, of course, now as they've grown, they've got some funding grants from U.S. Rugby Foundation. Now they pay their coaches. They've hired a league administrator. They hired professional social media marketing. And as of last year, they had 800 kids in their house league. From 2010 to today, They have an 800 kid house league with multiple kind of franchises in Cleveland. So it'd be sort of similar to a Toronto model where there's a multiple clubs, but it's really all under one club. But it's just like the East Cleveland team, the South Cleveland team, the Akron team, whatever, have age groups, multiple age groups. They all play at one location in Cleveland. But I just present this as a model of something to consider. It's where I think London rookie rugby should go and our region's rookie rugby should go. I'm guessing there's a lot of other clubs that should be thinking along this lines of creating a little house league, creating multiple teams. How do we grow that age group? So that's just kind of something that's there that we have to model off that's been successful, and why do anything different than what's been successful? So moving forward, is there another slide here? Did you miss one? Is there one after this or before this? There should be another one. Oh, you know what? Okay, sorry, I made a second one after the one I shared with you. Never mind. Okay.
That's right.
So just kind of summarizing my kind of arc of how things have gone. This is just this last slide here. So I began with that school heavy focus, doing lots of work there. Found it was tough to convert the elementary schools to club programming. Found a lot of work, and maybe my job wouldn't be sustainable if that's the results I was getting. So with the nudging of Mr. John Hyland and Jocelyn, we sort of shifted. We got to develop the club's capacity in a different way. So we moved in that direction, and that's where projects like the winter training program, the spring house league, developing coaches, game leaders, that's where the shift has been. Lots of work to do in terms of our club development. And so that's kind of where we've shifted. That's where I'm at now. What does the program look like? What should it look like? How do we build these programs? And the bigger picture that many clubs in this province need, and I know all the clubs do in my region, is strategic planning. We have a lot of good volunteers, a lot of hardworking volunteers in Sarnia, in London, in Middlesex, and in surrounding clubs. They're not all on the same page planning wise. They're not necessarily knowing what the direction is in terms of where they want to look like in a year or two or three. They aren't necessarily working together to establish priorities as best as they could. So that's the kind of piece that I'll be sort of still working on, just getting started with London and Middlesex. What should the strategic plan for that region be? What are we all aiming towards? Let's all get on the same page. Let's not trip over each other. That sort of thing. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. You can just flip maybe to my last slide. So ongoing stuff, this is just sort of stuff I haven't necessarily touched on, but like I've sort of touched on the large pool of game leaders. There is a lot of opportunity in schools. There's a ton of opportunity there, and schools will welcome you in. To capitalize on that, we need the clubs to be way more organized in terms of what the school to club pathway is. And we also need a way bigger source of game leaders who can support teachers in that short term, and then eventually finding a way to really conquer the school board level and get teachers on board, get competition in schools on board, etc. But there's lots of budget and lots of challenges there. But other stuff I've done the school board. So I do have, so there's some SHISM programs, SHSM. If you're unaware of that, it's kind of a specialist high skills major. Many schools in London have this, and they have a sports specific one. A few key ones with rugby programs. We've sort of planted seeds. There's at least 2 kids next year that it looks promising that I could have working as full co-op students for half a day in the second semester. Hoping that moves forward. And they're both players I've coached within the Middlesex club too, so we're all in sync in terms of making it happen. Curriculum development is ongoing, and that's also just a big project that we need support from more people than just myself and from across the province and Rugby Canada as well. And like I've already mentioned, strategic planning. So I think that sort of wraps up. There's just that sort of final piece again is I've kind of gone through a whirlwind of stuff I've done. At the end of the day, what is rugby development is a big question. It's evolving for me even. And just being in the sort of, trenches of this stuff. It's just stuff. I mean, I've been in rugby for 30 years and I learn every month in terms of better ways of doing things. So, the more people we have that are professionals in this sport, that can work in this and work day to day in this, the better we're going to be able to execute on programs and have programs that are sufficient to meet the needs and really grow our game. I mean, I look at our game and I see from the kids' enjoyment in schools, and I see out there, there's no reason it can't be significant growth in the next few years in terms of how kids like it. It's just we don't have the capacity at clubs to really deliver the programs and to grow it right now. So there's so many things we have to do in terms of that rugby development piece to really capitalize, but it's not for lack of interest. It's not for the sport. The kids like it. We can do it if we get more professionals in the game and just keep plugging away. And our volunteers, we find new volunteers, of course. That's the never-ending struggle of volunteer capacity. Sorry, there's a weird whirlwind of stuff for me there. It's recorded, and I'm sorry about the technology troubles there, but hopefully it's a decent enough recording that's useful for people going forward.
Thanks, Rob. Well, if you're watching the recording, we'll hopefully have cropped out a few of the dead time where we're sorting through some technical issues. But I'm going to just flip us over to Nick Mans. So as we mentioned in a few sessions, we've got a new intro to the series, trying to do a little bit of share and tell from some of our clubs. So today we've got Nick Mans from Burlington Centaurs, and following on our sort of school to club pathway theme tonight, Nick's going to talk a bit about their approach to getting into schools and how that's been working for them. Nick.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Yeah, exactly. A lot of things that Rob touched on, that's what we want to talk about. I felt previously we did have a lot of issues trying to get into the school boards. We just happened to be blocked, or we couldn't get into them, and we just really couldn't get a foothold. So we really reached out to a lot of the contacts we had, teachers that were in the program, teachers that have been involved with the school board. And then there was a turnover with some of the staff that was involved with specifically the Halton District School Board. And so it's quite a big school board, and it involves all of Burlington, Oakville, and Milton. And this one woman took over, Tanya Woods. She was the kind of instructional program leader for health and physical education. And when she took over and we came to her after kind of butting our heads against the wall for quite a few years, she was very open into this program and like what rugby involved, and kind of the fact that it's so inclusive and in incorporating everyone, no matter what their skill levels and everything else was. She backed us huge. So a lot of it, I will say, is like, if you guys have teachers with your club or school board, like really keep pushing them to get you in contact with the right person to spread that message. So once we got in touch with her, she actually sent out all the communications on behalf of the club to send that out, and we wanted to start that Halton Elementary Rookie Rugby program. So we're looking to do flag rugby program. We sat with the teachers. We did a teachers workshop where we invited all the teachers to come to a high school. We had a couple rookie rugby kits that we raffled off with teachers. You know, they like to be motivated with some free things for their schools. So we found that was really helpful to get them a couple of the rookie rugby kits, so balls in their hands, show them what the kits look like so that they're available to purchase. Previously to there was a issue, some schools, there wasn't enough inventory, but I think Rugby Canada has really sorted that out, and they seem to have a lot of stock in hand, if I'm correct, Jocelyn. Have you heard any issues? They seem to have a new supplier out there, so
Yeah, I haven't heard any issues with it, so hopefully.
yeah.
Okay.
So a lot are available. We actually stockpiled a couple just to have on hand so we could sell them to schools. And originally, you know, the program was a little slow going. We offered it to grades 4, 5, and 6. I'm sure it differs in every school board, but in Halton, they don't really start competitive sport until grades 4, 5, and 6, or at least organized sport with other schools. So we worked out very well with the Tanya Woods, because initially we did it earlier. We conflicting with basketball, some track. So she really gave us some positive feedback on and other teachers as well. They're like, do it at this time. So we're going to do our teachers workshop April 30th because basketball season's over and there's no conflict. And then that way it still gives the teachers 6 to 8 weeks to run a kind of program in their school, teaching kids the basics of rugby and flag rugby. And then we actually host them grades 4, 5, and 6 on June 13th would be the date this year. So we'll host it here at Burlington at Sherwood Forest Park. And we've actually had such a great uptake. Like we went from 100, 150 kids the first year that we did it. This is probably our 4th year doing it after the break from COVID. And last year we had over 500 kids that wanted to come out to play this flag rugby, elementary rookie rugby season. So we had grades 4, 5, and 6, and then we actually had the kids that now that they've progressed on to grades 7 and 8, we're going to be able to host a separate tournament the following week for grades 7 and 8. And if you have another rugby club that you can partner up with, we've been lucky enough to now get Oakville into the mix, and they're actually going to host their tournament as well on for grades 4, 5, and 6 to kind of encompass everyone. So schools can either go to one or they can go to both, depending on what their funding is. And I'd say that we had a lot of interest even from some other schools, but unfortunately they didn't necessarily have the budget to include that. So that's the one thing that we'll be looking forward is there a way that we can get some funding or some with the schools or the province and be able to help offset the cost of bus and supply teachers or whatever else the schools that might have an issue that would prevent them from attending this tournament. So I think we've done a good job of doing it year in, year out. I would say I kind of agree with Rob. You don't necessarily see that return on investment or ROI, that summer with your mini program, but it does build in and we get more kids joining every year. But the biggest thing is just getting that sport out to all those elementary kids. The fact that they're able to play something and be involved and have a rugby ball in their hands, so that when they do go to high schools, it's a familiar sport for them. I remember one of our big high schools that we have in Burlington, Dan Pletch was the teacher there, former World Cup, for Rugby Canada. And I was like, what can we do to help you to promote the sport? We had all these high schools and we had coaches. He's like, get a kid to touch a rugby ball before he comes to my high school. So at that time, I had just taken over as president. So it really shifted my focus from being like, get high schools, get teachers, get volunteers in the high schools, shifting our focus to like, let's develop the elementary schools. So at least they have that base knowledge, because the high school season is so short. They barely have time to learn to catch and pass, and they're trying to tackle. It's just so many things at once where people don't really necessarily grasp the whole concept of the game, and they lose a little bit of interest. And with the elementary schools, we've seen a huge uptick in our region, especially with the girls. So girls get into high school, they're in grade 9, and even though they've only played like 6 weeks in their elementary school, they get to high school and they're like, oh, rugby team? They're like, I know how to play rugby, even though they just played kind of like this elementary rookie rugby, very basics, but it gave them enough confidence to go into their high school program and take that chance to try out for their high school rugby team. So we've seen a really big influx in those kids that, because they had it at their elementary school, they felt very confident to try that sport once they went to high school. Where a lot of times, if you look at the records, like especially with females and girls, that sport side of things for girls really drops off. Where this was an opportunity for them to feel confident and take that on, so that they would continue to play the sport. And now we see it, the ROI, even though it's been 4 or 5 years, we're like, oh man, our minis numbers haven't changed that much, and we've been running this program and doing all this work and volunteering. Well, now we see it that we have a U14, a U16, a U18, and a very strong program, and even feeding into our women's program, where we have two women's sides for the first time ever last year. So it's been, I will say it does make a difference, but it's not a one and done. You got to keep on it and be consistent and really utilize any of those coaches you have in high schools or elementary schools, and kind of spread the word and be that lead person, because you just see it with teachers. They don't necessarily want to take on extra work, but we have been able to give them that support into the schools where they feel confident that they can provide the program. As well, like previously, Rugby Ontario did Canada Summer Jobs programs to get interns, and we've taken that on ourselves as our club. It is a lot of paperwork, but I know Jocelyn's done a lot of work to put the SOPs together for clubs to apply, and kind of templates and everything like that. So it's been very helpful for us, and we've had an intern now for the last 3 years where we utilize them for their 8 weeks, not necessarily during the rugby season, but for May and June. So they have that chance to get into the schools and be involved and really grow that program. Where previously we weren't using them until like, July and August. And you would still have your kind of like, kids have already picked their sport by that time, and they're already kind of out. It was great to have some help with our mini program. We found it much more beneficial to use that paid government grant to be able to get into the schools, use these varsity athletes when they're back from after university, after their exams, to get into the schools when the kids are still around, and still be able to promote the sport with them. So yeah, I just want to kind of touch base a little bit on that and provide you with the history of what we've done. And like I say, if you're lucky enough to have another club in your same school district, it's been huge to work together with them. Like I'm surprised that the clubs in Ottawa aren't all working together to make something like that work, or Toronto and other school boards that kind of like overlap, because it's been a huge success to get that out there, and trying to even grow it into the Milton area, north of North Halton, I guess we would call it, where we are. But it's been great, and it's nice to work with another club as well, where in the past perhaps we didn't work well together, or saw each other's clubs as competition, and this was a great initiative where we saw the benefit of just teaching the sport to the youth and getting them involved. And even if it's just a taste for them, you can see that 5 years later it made a lasting impression, and that they still consider, they're like, oh, I played rugby, I know rugby. And they felt that that kind of connection that we've all felt when we first picked up the ball, and why we love the sport so much. So
Yeah, that sort of familiarity or confidence that you speak of, to then get back into rugby when an opportunity presents itself later, whether it's high school or a club or something else.
correct. Where as opposed to them being, well, I've never played this sport before, I'm not going to pick it up now. And you see it with kids, it's harder and harder to get them active, let alone involved into a organized sport where they feel like they're kind of behind the learning curve. And it's one of those great sports where you can bring out somebody new that's never played before, and they can end up being one of your better players in a season or two. So
So, so some different models there, sort of between some of Rob's examples, what Nick and Burlington and Oakville are doing. We've had a few questions. One that maybe Nick will get you to touch on is just the challenge of budgets being a barrier for elementary schools and getting into elementary schools. Is that something you've come across, or that you've been able to kind of get through a bit more?
well, I will say the one benefit of the rookie rugby kits is they are highly subsidized. Like if you went on to try to buy a set of flags or a set of cones and a set of balls, it would be, like you say, that budget would be very tough. They actually market that rookie rugby kit to be, I think it's under 300 or under $250. So they've done that price point based on their research that a lot of phys ed teachers will have that budget available to them, and they don't need to have special permission from the board to be able to purchase that. So it's something that it's at a level that the schools can purchase it themselves and get out. Like I said, the biggest, I guess, would be buses and things like that. But if you can get in with that health and physical education instructional program leader, then they kind of put it on their agenda for the school board, and it's not something additional. It's built into their curriculum. So they have a certain amount of budget for that. It was only some of the other schools that were, they're like, oh, well, we just had basketball, we can't get out for this other, and it was kind of like in addition to their curriculum already. So we've done a good job of just even having our parents go in and pushing the schools or pushing the certain teachers and having them be on board, and then it hasn't seemed to be too much of a barrier once we reach that. And again, there's no cost to join the tournament. They come to us. We actually take it upon ourselves to provide lunch for them, some water, just pretty basic things, but things that make a difference to the kids. Appreciate. They're like, oh, I get a lunch, I get water, I get this. So it's a very basic lunch, but at least it's providing them something in addition to what they did. So
Anything free is exciting, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, clarification, maybe just specific to Ottawa, not KIT, but travel teacher availability. So yeah, a lot of this is regional, which is why it's been a challenge to get something that can be kind of cookie cutter across the province, right? Because every school board, and Nick had a great example there of pounding their heads against the wall until there was a change of personnel.
Yeah, I will say there was probably a good 2 years where every time we were like, oh, we want to get into this meeting for this kind of like their instructional lead, they're like, oh, we'll do it in the spring. And then they're like, oh, we couldn't fit you. We'll do it in the fall. And it felt like they were just kind of brushing us off. Yeah. And when this new person came on board, she loved it. She's like, oh, like you're going to come in and teach my teachers how to do this? Oh, you're going to provide them some information that's available on the Rookie Rugby website or from Rugby Ontario. And it was like, they really appreciated us having it kind of like that we could roll out to them and things like that. And every teacher, I speak to a lot of the teachers that are involved in my club, and they're like, no, it's just like not a lazy principal, a principal that doesn't want to change anything. And you just gotta get the teachers or the parents to kind of like keep pushing and keep asking, and then the change occurs. It might not occur right away, but if you keep at it, it can be very, very beneficial. And it's come to the fact where we're almost like stressed because of so many kids have been signing up. Like last year, like I said, we went from like 100, 150 to 200, maybe almost 300, and then the next year we had 500. And we're like, oh my God, like how are we going to be able to facilitate this? The one thing that we need to do, because obviously the tournament takes place during the day and it's 10 a.m. to like 2 p.m. We're used to running large mini tournaments. Like, we'll have 1,000 people here for our kickoff mini tournament, but all of those coaches that are involved, they're very competent refs at that level. Where we found these teachers were a little over their heads to be able to ref some of the games. So we had to really work hard to make sure that we had some people involved. We used some high schools, but a lot of them are all in exam times around that time. So we kind of used our U14 group to come out, and a lot of our old boys that would be willing to be officials during the game, just to keep it flowing and make sure that everyone was kind of on the same page regarding the rules and everything like that.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Maybe one or two other pieces I'll touch on. I know we're going over here, but we had some technical difficulties. So if you have to leave, I'm sorry. Feel free to drop off, but I think we can have a bit more conversation if we're up for it. So another question was around insurance barriers with that sort of school to club transition again, and working with school programming, either against clubs or how to kind of get around some of the Rugby Canada limitations when working outside of the club.
Yeah, so no problem. So like I said, the school board kind of booked it all. They have their own insurance. They book our field and numerous times for cross-country events and other things like that. So it wasn't an issue for them. We are on city property, so they were able to book the fields through the city. But I'm sure even if you owned it yourselves, you could have the school book it, and it was basically all of their insurance and everything else was through them. So we didn't have to do any extra paperwork or red tape with Rugby Ontario. It was basically, it was a school program. That's why they have the school buses, and everything else was on through the school board.
Yeah. Yeah, and to go broader on that, there are certainly a few pieces that we are advocating, as I said in the chat, to Rugby Canada for, in terms of some differences or some updates to some of the registration options, insurance options, to help us with some of the more innovative recruitment tools that people are working on. But one of the best workarounds is partnering with schools, whether it's elementary or high schools that you're working with, or doing it through a university or college, having their insurance cover it, or working with your city or township. So in each of those cases, we have some successful examples of clubs. So if you're looking for how to work around something, feel free to reach out, and we can help you kind of troubleshoot or look at what some of the different options are within club and Rugby Canada registration, or external partnerships that can help support that.
Yeah, and if you get out in front of it, I know rugby, we're always, seems to be last minute to try to get things. Obviously, school boards and cities don't like to work that way, but we've had some good success with running some events through the city. But like I said, you've got to almost get out of it a year in advance, or at least at the end of like October, November, to run something in the spring. But you reach out to them, and they're quite happy to run things that are especially physical education or anything to do, especially with kids. So they seem to be able to work with us quite well.
Okay, last piece that we'll end on, and both Nick and Rob, I think you've each answered this to some extent, but I'll maybe get sort of your final thoughts here. The question was around the reason for low retention rate from school to club. We talked about how it's maybe not having the impact when you look at the number of athletes that are involved and enjoying themselves when we do school outreach versus how many are actually registering with the club. So bullet points, what are your kind of big takeaways in terms of what would you do differently, or what do you think would be our best suggestion moving forward to increase that rate?
I'll go on this. Yeah, this is actually a good question. I'm glad this was raised. So, I mean, ultimately, it's about building relationships with your clubs and your coaches in terms of getting them to come. You know, it's not about the game or the enjoyment of the game itself. It's, you know, the parents have got existing relationships with their soccer mom friends or their baseball friends or whatever sports. They've sort of established relationships already. And I mean, some may be completely new and not have these sporting relationships, but to get somebody to break up with their other sport, essentially is no easy thing. There's going to have to be a reason, and maybe that's why Nick has success. Where at a certain point in time, it's like you get to high school, and all of a sudden, your sports you have right now maybe aren't exciting more. You're looking for a change. High school is a time for change, so it maybe works. But we don't have an ability to build relationships with parents in elementary schools. That's the main thing. And kids don't have the ability to build relationships with people who are in clubs yet, or maybe some do. If they do, then that's probably more successful. But if they don't have a relationship with the club and they just have a relationship with the sport itself and the game itself, I think we'll struggle with that getting involved with club. That's my answer, at least.
Nick, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think you need to lean on kind of like some of those teachers or build those relationships to be the advocates for them. You know, you even see that in the high schools. If you don't have a strong teacher advocate for the sport of rugby, it's tough for them to really to build a team. So, as Rob says, it's going to be it's outside of that range, and again, you got to be organized early, because I'm a parent of two young kids, and you already have parents being like, okay, what flag football team are we going to be on, or what's soccer, what sport are you doing? And it's kids are definitely pulled in a lot of different directions, and I end up doing some sort of activity almost every night after school, which is good to keep them busy, but it's financially it's expensive, and it gets exhausting driving them around, and they're still not even teenagers yet. But I think, yeah, leaning towards those teachers to be the advocates. I've yet to join any kind of parent groups, but I'm not sure if that's maybe another avenue where we can kind of get it out in front of the schools and in front of the other parents and kind of build that relationship. And just the other things we try to do is the community events, like we're doing an Easter egg hunt this Saturday, and just doing more of those wide range where you're inviting in the broader community group, so that you're getting friends of friends or parents, and just get them to experience what kind of that rugby culture is like, and how it differs from other sports, and can make a lasting lifetime kind of enjoyment.
Mhm. Yeah, I think what you both touched on is that relationships piece, that they like the sport, that's great, and hopefully it opens up, more possibility to future entry points, but without that sort of more direct tie. And I've seen that in some of the outreach we've done, just with Rugby Ontario, Rugby Canada, going in and supporting them. Someone might have a really great experience, like, great, when can I go and play rugby for you? Like, well, I'm here doing this one outreach session. I can direct you to a club, right? Or I can direct you to another program. But if they're not building the relationship with the club or the coach that they're going to be involved in, or they've got, a trusted teacher or camp coach, whoever it is that's doing that session, who's advocating for and directly feeding them into a trusted person at a club, that without that relationship, I think it's a lot harder to make that stick. And then, as Rob said, the relationship with the parents as well, because especially with the younger ages, like until they hit high school, the parents are mostly driving their participation. So if the parents aren't bought into rugby, it's not really going to happen to the same volume. But lots to take away there, lots of wheels spinning, hopefully, for all of you. Huge thank you to Rob and to Nick for taking the time to help us get through all of this, and thinking about our upcoming seasons and future of rugby involvement and recruitment and retention. A reminder that the recording and the slides resources will be posted to the virtual portal, and eventually we'll join our YouTube channel with all of our previous recordings. You can rewatch, you can share those sessions with others who've missed it. I've just put our chat here, or chat in the chat, a link to our survey, exit survey. So if you can take a few minutes and complete that, we really appreciate that. Help us with planning for future sessions and future initiatives. And we have one final session of our series, which will be in 2 weeks on April 28th. And it will be the return of Dr. Carl Erickson from York University. So he spoke at our conference in the winter. He and his team have been working away at some research that they introduced. So really excited to see their updates and sort of future direction from there. So come be a part of that conversation and help see how we continue to move that research forward. As always, if you've got questions, anything rugby development related, reach out. But thank you so much for joining and taking the time, and enjoy the rest of your night.